Okay. Good morning from Seattle, Bill. Good afternoon here in Barcelona, Spain. We will start the show in a moment. Okay, let me
Thank you.
introduce the chat, in this case, the show that with us are Bill Dow, a welcome professional around PMOs, years and years of experience. And today's show is around PMOs, of course, but especially how do you implement metrics in PMOs? And after that is a little presentation. Bill, on your hands, you can start the
Awesome.
presentation.
Well,
Thank
thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining. I know everyone's super busy, and this is my second or third time talking to the group. So I'm really, really excited about being here and walking you through PMO metrics. I love this topic. This topic is called PMO metrics, introducing them into your PMO. So really, really excited. So let's jump into it. Before I do, though, I want to give you my background, right? Who am I? Well, I'm active. My name is Bill Dow, and I'm an active PMO director in a large University of Washington. So I run a very large PMO here in the Seattle, Washington area. I was at Microsoft for 14 years, and I ran 7 PMOs there. I've worked at AT&T and Singular, so all around the U.S., lots of passions in the PMO space. About 21 or so years actually in PMOs, 31 in project management and in that background. I've been a speaker around the world. I've done conferences around the world. I'm a 5-time author as well. So PMO Lifecycle, Building, Running, Shutting Down, which is really where a lot of this topic is. Project Management Communication Tools. My first PMO book was a tactical guide for building a PMO, which was really a big hit on Amazon back in 2012 or so. Project Management Communication Bible. And then my 5th book I just put out, and that's around PMO service offerings. Okay, so we've got a huge agenda. We've got lots and lots of stuff to cover, which is going to be great. So we'll talk about metrics versus KPIs. We'll talk about creating metrics, PMO metrics by PMO type, PMO metrics examples, PMO metric data. I want to talk to you about that. I want to talk to you about best practices as well, and really talking about how you do this. We're going to talk about dashboards and reports. I've got a course on that as well, and I'm going to talk to you about some of those, and then we'll give you some summary and some more information. So it's a pretty jam-packed agenda. I'm going to go fast and slow, making sure that you guys get the data and get the concepts, and you'll be able to implement those metrics in your PMO as well. So like I said, really, really excited, love sharing my background and my experiences. Okay, what are the correct metrics for your PMO? This is a question I get all the time, and it's not easy, right? Because every PMO is built differently, and each PMO has their own needs, especially when it comes around metric reporting, and especially when it comes around your leadership and your executives. So as I said, most of the material I covered today is in chapter 17 of my book, PMO Lifecycle, Building, Running, Shutting Down. But again, the correct metrics is a very interesting question, because it's going to be different for every PMO, and we'll walk you through that. So let's dive into it. But wait. Before I start, I have a question. I'm going to just pause. How many of you are nailing your PMO metrics? Right? How many of you have got great PMO metrics already, doing a super job at it, actually knocking it out of the park? And so your PMO's already filled with metrics and you just want to get better. Or how many of you have very few metrics and just really getting started? And so again, you can put that in the chat and we'll come back to that. And so I think it's really important, because we really want to understand where people are at, and are they advanced in the PMO metric, or are they brand new in the PMO metric? I've seen a variety of scenarios where people are really all over the place though, right? And not a lot of people are choosing the correct metrics. And we'll talk about what that looks like. But again, it's really important to understand where you're at in this journey, and then we're going to walk you through that path. And a lot of people are saying, yeah, they're just getting started. Great. Okay. The other question that comes up when we talk about this metric is what's the difference between a KPI and a metric, right? Again, lots of confusion around that one, lots of questions around that. So what I wanted to do is I really wanted to start there. So a key performance indicator is a kind of a metric. In other words, all KPIs are metrics, not all metrics are KPIs. KPIs have these characteristics. They're defined by the management team. They cascade through the organization based on corporate standards, easy to comprehend, empower users, and they lead to positive action. Okay, so it's really important that we understand what are KPIs and what are metrics. And when we think about metrics, we often use the term business metrics, right? So what are business metrics, right? Well, we've seen a lot of these before. We've seen business value as metrics. We've seen customer satisfaction, right? In America, we have JD Power, we have social media, we have customer sentiment, which all drive within customer satisfaction. Your business value, forgot that, sales, revenue, net profit. Governance metrics, right? The number of cyber attacks, number of policy violations, right? And then one of the ones that I just absolutely love doing because I think it's so important, we're starting to see a trend in that, is organizational change management metrics, right? Including the scope of the change, the number of work groups, departments, number of employees affected, type of change, right? So these are 4 very common, very basic business metrics that you're going to create. And the idea here is to generate a list of valid metrics to be considered during the execution of a project. However, you as a PMO manager, right, you shouldn't be identifying these metrics yourself. You should be working with experts, Six Sigma experts, business architects, whoever you have in your organization, but you really shouldn't be the key person in generating these metrics because it's a much bigger story and it's a much more complicated process than you just creating metrics for the fun of creating metrics. It should be all aligned to how you're driving through your organization. So these are the 4 key metrics that I strongly believe you should get set up within your organization. And again, every company is different. Okay, so your PMO might track several types of metrics as well, right? So organizational and performance metrics, right? Quantitative and qualitative, right? Quantitative, we know, are those that you have a specific number, right? And qualitative are much more subjective. Tangible and intangible metrics, right? So there's several types of metrics that you're going to create. Again, every company is different. I can't tell you what's right or wrong for your particular company. It's a larger conversation and that one that you're going to have within your own company. But I strongly suggest you start that process and start getting that set up. Okay? All right, so now let's move into creating metrics. I wanted to give you kind of the types of metrics, but now what we want to do is we want to create those metrics, okay? We can't improve what we don't measure. I absolutely love this quote, right? When you think about metrics, we can't improve what we don't measure. Right? And so think about that. That's the whole idea around having metrics, right? We want to measure how well we're doing, so therefore we can improve it. You guys seen that quote before? I'm sure you have. It's one that's been around, but I think it's so appropriate when we're talking about metrics and really moving the bar forward for our organization. Okay? Many PMO managers rush into creating metrics in their PMO with little to no background on what to improve or what to measure. Have you guys seen that before? Right? So we're in such a hurry to create these metrics, to get metrics in place, but we're like, well, what are we trying to measure? What are we trying to actually improve, right? So rushing into creating metrics is really a bad idea. Right? Because what it can do is it can generate, and I've seen this before, it can generate bad behavior because you have to hit a metric. You have to hit a particular number, right? We're trying to get X number. And so we've seen some bad metrics just to create that. We've seen and we've heard watermelon, right? I want to have X amount of reds or X amount of yellows or whatever the case may be. We've seen watermelon, right? So again, it can generate bad behavior. So you don't want to rush into doing this. The other thing that you want to do when you think about creating metrics is you want to understand the type of PMO that you're running. So are you running a directive PMO? Are you running a supportive PMO? Are you running a controlling or an enterprise or an agile PMO, right? And so understanding the type of PMO is the number one step in understanding what metrics you can create for your organization. Okay, I want to stress that one more time. There's 7 different main types of PMOs out there, from directive to supportive to controlling, right? You can go all the way around the circle. These are the main ones. Are there others? Sure. But the main thing here is you need to understand your PMO type to then understand the type of data that you're going to collect. And once you understand the type of data you can collect, that data will then turn into metrics, right? Because data is what creates the metrics. And you have to have the processes and procedures in place to run your PMO to therefore get the data created on a regular basis to therefore then create your metrics. Does that make sense? Because I really want to stress that there's a lot of rush and a lot of pressure to get metrics created. But if you don't start and say, hey, what type of PMO am I running? And what data do I create to therefore keep that metric engine going? Then it's just a one and done process. And metric creation is not a one and done process, especially when you create dashboards and reports and you get all that goodness and all that stuff started, which we'll cover coming up here. So it's really, really important. You have your PMO type, and based on your type, then you select the data. Based on that data, you can create your metrics. I actually wrote an article up on mpug.com. I'm sure most of you guys are up there. It's called the Power of BI. And it takes you from data to information to knowledge to action. Definitely go check that out, the Power of BI, but it really walks you through that. So the key takeaway here, though, is a supportive PMO metric will not equal a directive PMO metric. Okay, so the data is different. The data that's collected is different. So how many projects hit their on-time schedule or on-time budget or a budget, right? Compared to how many project managers get their PMPs are 2 completely different metrics. They're both valid, but they're different. And I think that's a really key point that we have to understand, right? We don't, if you're running a directive PMO and you're worried about on time and on budget and business value and all the goodness, organizational change management, all the goodness that you do to drive a PMO, then how many people got their PMPs or how many people took a training class has nothing really to do with what that information is in that directive PMO. So could you capture that information? 100%. Should that be your main focus? No. It should be focused on the data that you're getting as you execute through the business. Make sense? Okay. So now we understand the different types of PMO that require different metrics. Right? Now I want to be clear on how to create them. So it's important that you're consistent in creating your PMO metrics by having a common set of data and a common set of data points, especially when you want to use the data for dashboards and reports, right? So there's a common set of fields that you should capture, especially when you start getting dashboards out there. You're going to want that flow of data to keep coming in. Ultimately, though, your goal, like everyone's is to improve, right? Can't measure, right? You can't improve what you don't measure. So consistency on the fields and the data coming into those fields will be critical for your reporting and your long-term dashboard and reports. Okay, make sense? Awesome. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to give you the 8 fields that I use and continue to use when collecting metrics for my organization. Purpose, the baseline number, which includes the starting point for your metric, the target number, the unit of measure, the frequency, the leading indicator, the lagging indicator, and the reporting method. So here are the 8 fields that you should create when creating metrics for your organization. Can these vary? Of course they can vary. Should they vary? No, not right away. They shouldn't. What you should do is you should get really good at collecting these first, figure out all the data and all the processes to collect these, and then you can start adjusting, and then you could start tweaking. But if you're brand new and you're just starting out, use these 8 data points to be able to start getting that metric data created for your organization, and then of course dashboard and report it. Okay, so 8 different steps. And so what I want to do now is I want to spend time and I want to look at the PMO metrics by the PMO type, because as I said, it's critical to understand the type of PMO to then turn around and then be able to have that data coming in consistently, so you know this is not a one and done process. The minute you start showing dashboards and reports to your executives, they're going to love them. And so if you say, yeah, this was just a one-time collection, that's a problem. You want to be able to make sure you're constantly bringing in that data. Okay, so PMO metrics by PMO type. So PMO metrics, and we've said it before, but are dependent on the type of PMO you're running. You would not create a PMO metrics applicable to a directive for a supported PMO. Would not make sense, don't have that data. So how many projects completed on time, how many projects completed on budget, not applicable for most supported PMOs. Could it be? 100%, because supported PMOs and directive PMOs, they're generally got the same look and feel and how they're acted, but they could differ. So these could certainly be metrics for supported PMO. That's why I said most, but generally not really. Right? You must understand what data you're collecting and have control over your type of your PMO. And I think that's really, really important. So what I want to do is I want to give you the first one. So let's start with a supportive PMO. So here's the metric. Percent of project managers to be PMP certified. Purpose, PMP certification enhances the skills. We all know that. Baseline number 60%, but I want to get to 90%. Right? My PMP certifications, that's the unit of measure. The leading indicators, the number of project managers scheduled for the exam, and the lagging is the number of project managers that are not interested in taking that exam. Right? And we're going to report this out monthly to our PMO management team or executive team. Okay? So using those 8 fields, these are exactly the metric I use for a large software company in Redmond, Washington. I was there for 14 years. This is the exact metric I use for my supported PMO I was running there. And it worked perfect, right? We had X amount of project managers at 60%. We needed to get to 90. These are exactly the metrics I've used. So these are the 8 fields that you use to capture your metrics when you're creating them for your PMO. Directive PMO, supported PMO, here's the 8 fields. Make sense? Awesome. Okay, want to see another one? All right, here's another one. Percentage of programs and projects using a standard program and project methodology. Okay, and I'm not going to read the purpose. But again, we all know the goodness around using a consistent methodology. Baseline, 40%. So 40% of our projects are using a standard methodology. We want to hit a target of 90. Unit of measure, the number, right? The number of projects following that methodology. So leading, number of projects following a standard methodology, lagging, number of projects that are not following a standard method. This is metric is counted reported when projects hit major milestones and associated sign-off meetings. Okay, I just want to pause there for a second because I think this is really important. No, it's a supported PMO. This is a very, very important statement in a directive PMO as well. So the metric is counted and reported when projects hit major milestones at an associated sign-off meeting. If you're running a directive PMO, one of the things that you could be offering are phase gates, right? Phase gates templates, phase gates processes, phase gates counts, phase gates metrics, whatever the case may be. If you're running a directive PMO, you should be running phase gates, right? When we hit a baseline, or we hit a development phase or a design phase, or whatever the case may be. This metric and this reporting metric actually says during the life of a project, we're going to count how many projects are using a standard methodology. And they're going to fill in all the things in the phase gate to say, I have a schedule, I have a budget, I have a risk log, I have an issue log, whatever the case may be. But this metric alone has given you this process of intermixing how you create metrics with how you run your projects in both a supportive and a directive manner. So does that make sense? Can you guys just jump on the chat real quick and we'll look at it a little bit later, but does that make sense? Because when I told you earlier, it really depends on the type of PMO that you're running, right? You have to have the processes and procedures in place to be able to collect this data. Now what we're saying is we've actually built a metric, and we're running phase gate projects, we're running major milestones, and we have a checkpoint in place where we can collect this data. So instantly, this metric is not a one and done. Okay, now think about how this starts to value as you keep executing projects and delivering projects, and you can see how your dashboards and reports start growing as all your projects are executing. It's a really key point. I just wanted to pause there because I think it's really, really important that you understand that it's really important to get that process and those procedures and that ongoing data flow in place before you think about your metrics. Or highlight your metrics like this, use this template, start building it in and go, but wait, how am I going to report it? How am I going to get that data? And it may require you getting processes and procedures in place that you don't have today. So you're going to ask your project managers, you're going to ask your program managers to provide you data to support some of these metrics. But again, you have to improve, right? You're trying to improve, you need to measure, you need metrics. So hopefully that made sense. And I wanted to just step back and make sure that was really clear, because a lot of people rush into creating these metrics and they don't have the back-end processes in place. If you don't have those back-end processes in place, it's a one and done scenario, and that's not where you want to be with those metrics. Okay, let's give you another metric, right? I love metrics. I can do these all day. Number of project teams that uses a centralized repository. Okay, again, centralized repository, SharePoint, blah, 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 right? 75% of our projects do it. We got to get to 95 or 100%. You guys decide what those numbers are. Well, your baseline number is what actually is out there, but you decide how much you want to go to. Programs and projects are the websites, the number of projects using SharePoint, for example, right? A lot of people use SharePoint. Number of projects without that centralized repository. Again, project metrics are accountable for account reporting. Again, you can use that at major milestones or phase gate meetings, or however you want to count it. Okay, so metric after metric after metric, you're constantly looking at what are the processes and how am I going to collect that data. And again, a very simple, very easy process and a set of 8 data points, if you would, on how you collect this data. Okay, all right. Last one. So tool for supportive, and again, we can do this all day. Percentage of projects using Microsoft Project. Love Microsoft Project, been there forever. Scheduling, or used it forever. Scheduling tool, 70% of our projects, we got to get to 100%. And it could be project, it could be monday.com, it doesn't really matter, but it's a scheduling tool, right? And again, unit of measure, number of projects, number of project managers, and then a reporting method. And you can see how this actually keeps going and going and going, right? And we'll talk about how many you should be doing. The idea is the format and the data points are very, very smart, and they just make sense. And so when you're thinking about how you want to measure and how you want to improve your organization, it's really, really important that you keep with this data points, right? Keep with this to start, just to get you going. And then as you get into it, you can keep adjusting. As you get into it, you can look at the different processes and procedures that you may need to change, right? All in that concept of continue to get that data to continue to flow into your dashboards and your reports. Okay? All right. Now, I know most of you are running Directive PMOs. I get it. Some of you are running supportive. And so what I want to do is I want to give you just one or two examples, and then just one or so. But I want to give you some, what do Directive PMOs look like, okay? And what are some Directive PMO metrics? Okay. So when you're thinking about creating a series of Directive PMO metrics, right? Here are the easy ones and the ones that you should just be creating. Number of projects on time, on budget, overruns, change requests, organizational goals, right? I love that, right? How many projects are aligned with the organizational goals? Number of projects using vendors, right? To help you understand your staffing models. Number of projects completed this fiscal compared to last fiscal. I get that question all the time. How many projects did we do last year? How many projects are we on target to do this year? That's a question that comes up all the time. The point is, though, is this list is endless, right? And it's important for you to balance how many metrics you have in your PMO. Again, you don't want to drive bad behavior, but you can't improve what you don't measure, right? So having too many or too few, right? It's your culture, it's your leadership team, it's the structure and the processes that you have in place that are going to dictate how many metrics that you should have, right? I think I say it earlier, but I think when you're just starting, I do no more than 4. I would do no more than 4 metrics, okay? Because you want to get this process, you want to get this set up, you want to crawl, walk, run with this, right? 4 is a very good, solid number for most PMOs that are just wading into this metric pool. Less than 4 is too little, and you won't see the improvements. More than 4 gets too complicated, and you're striving to hit so many different metrics. So keep it in that 3 to 4 range at the very, very most. Okay. All right. Let's use our template. So here's our template. Metric, projects completed on time. Purpose, right? 70%, targets 90%, right? Maybe it should be higher, right? Your organization will drive that. You kind of want all projects to complete on time, but that's okay. Projects finishing based on the baseline finish date. So again, key point there, that means you're collecting a baseline. That means you got all the processes in place to collect that baseline. Number of change requests applied to the project. Again, are you tracking changes? These are project change requested, not organizational change. Number of projects using a change methodology. Again, there's rigor behind that statement. And the PMO will take finish line dates compared to actual dates when the project goes live. So again, there's another process. Someone's got to be involved in taking the actual finish date with the finish date and comparing the two to be able to hit that metric. So lots of goodness there, right? Lots of processes, lots of maturity that has to happen, right? So just this very simple metric on projects completed on time, when you start filling this table in and you start thinking about what you're going to do around leading and lagging and how you're going to take these and when you're going to take these, right? It generates a whole ton of processes and procedures in the background that you may or may not be considering. Does that make sense? Right? Because I don't want you to underestimate what your journey that you're about to get into. But again, you can't improve what you don't measure. So you have to get into this journey if you're going to run a world-class PMO and you're going to actually continue to drive that ball forward and make your PMO very, very valuable. Okay? All right, so now it's your turn. Oh, you're not actually going to do it today, but you get the idea, right? You have a PMO type, start there, type of the metric, start filling in that template. Again, this is your opportunity to fill in and answer those questions and figure out what 3 to 4 metrics that you're going to create. Okay? Metric data, right? So I talked about it a little bit earlier. I just want to give you one little thought process on this because I think it's really, really important and I don't want to lose it. Okay? Setting up the processes for data collection. So one of the key processes setting up metrics is to understand the key steps of getting that metric data. Right? I have lots and lots of stories about creating metrics across the 10 PMOs I've ran. And it always comes down to, wait a second, how do we get the data? How do we get the data, right? Metrics are not one and done. Data collection can be time consuming, can be costly, may require developers, it may require systems access that you don't have today, right? For example, if you wanted HR data or you wanted payroll data or you wanted financial data into your metrics, well, you may or may not have the rights to have that data. So you'd have to think about that as well. Understand the processes and procedures you're going to need to be followed and what data to be collected, right, is a key part of getting reporting metrics in your PMO. So what are the processes? What data do I need? And how does that data keep flowing in? Work with your PMO members, your staff members to collect, validate, and then report the metric data in your organization. So this key slide, this one slide I just wanted to pause briefly on, is a really key component. I can give you the templates, I can get you riled up and excited about creating metrics, but if you don't have these back-end processes and really start with that first and say, how are we going to get this data on a regular basis, you will not be successful in creating metrics. And I've done metrics across multiple PMOs. Okay, you have to figure out the back-end processes. And then once you have that and you're comfortable with that and you get that validated, then you can start putting up on dashboards and reports. Okay, let's look at some best practices. When you're creating metrics, right, when your management team or your customers ask you to change your approach to your PMO metrics, first consider how you're measuring the success of your PMO. So you have to have that conversation. They want you to collect this or they want you to collect that, whatever metric they want you to collect, you stop and go, how are we measuring the success of the PMO? Because that's the key sets of metrics we're going to create. I'm not saying fight them. I'm not saying disagree with them. What I'm saying is step back and look at how you're driving your PMO and what does everyone agree to be the success criteria. And again, success criteria for a directive PMO, success criteria for a supportive PMO is very, very different. Agree on that success criteria and then figure out if you need to change your metrics. It could you're just be reporting them wrong, right? So that's key. You want to keep your management team and your customers, your main stakeholders involved in this metric process. You could be creating metrics for the sake of creating metrics. Don't, right? It's really, really important that you understand what they need, what you need, and the combination of the 3 groups will decide what metrics to create for your organization. Establish metrics around business value. I can't stress that enough. If you want to keep your PMO connected to your company and your strategy and how you're driving value within your organization, keep your PMO metrics around that business value, right? So the number of PMO or projects aligned to the organizational values is one metric, right? There's lots of ways of doing that. Set metrics up only for areas you can control. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Only set up metrics for areas you can control. If there's data outside your span of control, don't create metrics on that because you'll be held accountable for it, or it'll be looking like you're holding accountable for it. And you'd have to turn and go, but that's his data or that's her data. You don't want to be involved in that. You only want to set up metrics in your PMO that you can control and you understand the process. Here it is here. Limit the number of metrics. 4 is a good number. 3 to 4, 4 is max, especially when your PMO is new and you're still maturing, right? Too many it's going to drive bad behavior. Too few, and you won't move your bar forward enough, right? Tie new metrics into existing organizational metrics, right, to ensure that alignment. So if you've got a customer sat, your company's got customer satisfaction metrics, see how you can create and see how you can get that same data within how you're driving your programs and your projects. Okay, so that alignment's huge. That's also why I said earlier, do this with a Lean Six Sigma expert. Do this with an architect. Like, do this with people that know metrics inside and out, so they're really driving you through the right processes, and then you're implementing them in the PMO. Okay, can't stress enough how important that is. All right, okay, let's jump into metrics and dashboards. So this is one of my favorite parts. I absolutely love this. Like I said, I have a course on it. I love dashboards and reports because it's really around showing the value and how you're moving forward. Okay, so now what we've done is we've spent time creating our metrics. We've set up the processes to collect the data, but unless you understand how you're doing on each metric, you don't know if you're getting better or not, right? So this is the exciting part, right? This is the really cool part, because you're showing your data, and the possibilities with Power BI or Tableau or whatever are endless, right? Once your management and your leadership team sees these, they're gonna love them, right? So let's look at some of these. Okay, so here's a PMO Metric Dashboard, and it says monthly hour differences by project. Okay, so monthly differences. So we set our actuals in January, here's our estimate. So one of the metric is really around those differences. Why is that important? Because there's a cost to that, there's a time to that, there's a resource allocation to that, right? Number of projects with late end dates. Okay, again, calling out metric after metric around, hey, how many, how long are our projects going, right? So there's just one of the hundreds of examples, right? Here's a resource management metric, right? Again, you can create what are our cost or resource overage costs, right? We've got those costs there. This is what we expected to pay. Here's our overage. Okay, this is the overage of those costs. So again, you can create tons and tons of metrics and continue to put that in front of people, because again, that's going to be the only way to really drive these and drive that ball forward, is if you're seeing how well you're doing. Again, just one of the examples. I do have a course on this. I have a whole course on how to build Power BI dashboards and reports from the very beginning, and then get you some sample data to get you up and running on your dashboarding. And I'll put that link in there. Okay, we're right about time here, so I just want to wrap up. Metrics can be very complicated, right? But they don't have to be. But often PMO managers make them more complicated, and I've said this throughout, really crawl, walk, run, right? It's really, really important that you take this slowly. Sometimes metrics drive bad behavior. I've seen that before. When people are trying to hit a number, right, it actually can create some bad behavior in the organization. You don't want that. You want metrics for good, because you want to see how you're doing, to then measure it, to then put processes and procedures in place to change that, right? PMO metrics need to continue to improve, right? You want to move your bar forward. You want to move your PMO forward, and you're going to do that through metrics. All right. Awesome. So like I said, I put all this in my book, The PMO Lifecycle, Building, Running, Shutting Down. Here is all my contact information. So Bill Dow, Dow Publishing LLC. You can get my books, Twitter, Facebook, all that goodness. I do have a course, as I mentioned, that will walk you through creating this. I'll put the link in the chat. And I'm right at time. So that is all I have. Right.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill. So interesting, the show. Okay, I get the point that it's close, that PMO metric can be close to make value and align to value to organization. I think this is a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and another point that I take is not a recipe of doing that. You need to adapt to your organization.
You do.
I think
Yeah,
this
you
is
can't.
another
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah, it's not a one and done, right? You can't take these exact metrics and put them in because every organization is different, and your executives are going to want you to move your bar differently than my executives or your executives or your executives, right? A lot of this is where I said have your management team and your customers engaged because the executives drive a lot of how you move your bar forward.
And let me say something because I am an IT guy of that. Okay, do you show Power BI? Because I know you are a Microsoft guy, of course.
Yeah,
That.
well, I was. I'm not there anymore, but I was.
Because
Yeah.
it not make fair to the audience. It's you can start so easily with metrics. You can do in an Excel sheet. It's not really to
Yeah.
mold a system or to look for any sophisticated tool for doing that. It's easy. You listen, me. It's only to be in a way of collect the information month by month. That is the more important thing. And after that, you can start so simply, not need to big tools. I think
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. The caveat to that is that you want ongoing data flowing into a system. So when you use Excel, it's a little bit trickier, right? When you
Yeah.
use like Project Online or Power BI, you have this ability to constantly bring data in. And if you're going to run a world-class PMO, you're going to run a PMO that's got metrics, you have to get out of Excel. But you're right, you can crawl, walk, run, and start with Excel, but that only is going to take you so far.
No, but it's sometimes I say that because it's sometimes difficult to convince the organization to do something. If
Oh,
you can
100%.
do
Yeah.
things in a simple way,
Yeah.
is the best to start.
100%.
Anyhow, we are now in a question time debate.
Okay. I'll stop
It
sharing.
is open for you. Whatever you want, you can use freely the microphone or the camera, whatever you want. Or if you are shy, you can write in the chat, no problem at all. We are open to all channels now. Okay.
Yeah.
Any question from someone?
I'll put that link just for folks that are interested. I'll put the link on that Power BI. But yeah, what kind of questions do you have? Did the 8 fields make sense? What kind of questions? Not for me. Awesome. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I think it's so clear.
Well, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It's a complicated topic, so I'm glad I kind of broke it down and made it clear. I know Brian said in the chat he was just starting out. Brian, did that make sense for you? Okay. I think it did.
It's a way long to be clear for me. Anyhow, you can have the opportunity to ask Bill whatever you want in order to PMO Metrics or some practical case that you have in mind. Hello, Leonardo.
There he is. Hi, Leonardo.
Hi, Bill, my friend.
Hi. How are you, sir?
Uh,
I'm glad you're able to join.
I'm always good when we are sharing with a great colleagues and friends as you are,
Yeah,
and thanks for coming and thanks for
of
sharing with
course.
the global community.
Yeah.
Apologize for delaying. Blai is my right hand, my friend. Is part of the PMOfficers team as well. So
Okay.
he is always helped me in these cases.
Awesome.
Can we share this session? That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, dokie, we are going to share is for global community recorded. We are going to share because I believe we need to enjoy it again. And from my point of view, we should share it with the rest of our colleagues, and one step beyond with is my point of view, with the PMO sponsor and these guys that have are in top management, and they are not very convincing to implement something in his company, because it's very complicated, as correctly have mentioned it, Bly, that it looks wonderful, but how can convince them?
Yeah. Well, when you talk about when you talk about trying to advance your PMO, the only way to do it is through metrics, right? You have to measure how well you're doing in a particular area, and then you know where you can make your course correction. You can't just say, I got the greatest PMO in the world, and you don't have any metrics in place, right? Like, you have to, right? That Peter quote is, you can't improve what you don't measure, right? And so that's why it's so important.
Absolutely agree, Bill. If you can demonstrate the value from PMO, PMO will disappear at the end of the day.
Yeah, I've ran 10 PMOs in my career, and the reason I've ran 10 is because they disappear, right? I mean, it's 10 for a reason, right? And so there's a longer story behind that, but just in general is you have to get but you do have to get these metrics in place. And definitely buy the PMO type too. That's really important.
It's not only have metrics, be on the same page that the business stakeholder is so important of that.
Yeah.
If you don't produce value for the organization, you are dead.
Yeah. And some of the stakeholders are very basic, and they say, you know what, we just want you to deliver on time. Please just get something in on time for us, right? And there's business value, and there's all these other great metrics you can create, but sometimes it just comes down to, I have a hard deadline, I need you to hit the deadline. It's that basic. And if you can say 95% of our projects hit on time, right, then that's a good metrics that's aligning exactly to what they want. And there's nothing wrong with that. Right. So sometimes these companies and these customers are not as mature as you think, and they literally just want you to hit budget or hit on time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I just for my own experience in several companies, several organizations, they are agree with that, but they are not pretty sure what kind of tool they can buy or invest in whatever, and they are pretty they don't want to put anything on the cloud. So they don't want to use anything on the cloud because that's my data. I want the control of my data in on premise on my house, and this is very complicated because most of the tools are on cloud. They're on premise.
The cloud.
Because I don't know. This is another huge challenge to convince the people. Okay, they love metrics. We can do it in Excel. Absolutely, no problem. But
you can't scale. You can't scale. I mean, again, 14 years at Microsoft, love Excel. You can't scale. It's not a scaling tool. There's some amazing people that have done amazing things with it. It can't scale. You need a project online. You need a Monday.com. You need a cloud-based product that you constantly have APIs and you can get to this data. Because metrics are not one and done.
Or another solution that I have done in the past with, let's create our own tool. Let's create it. Just conceptually, let's do it on paper, or mock-up or whatever. We can call it whatever we want. So let's do it. Mock-up. What do we need? What do we need? What do we to present for showing the value? Okay, to metrics. Okay, how is our global portfolio? Let's do it. And later, what do we have in the company? It doesn't matter what kind of tool, but let's do it. Let's build it. Yeah, it's on premise. We don't need to buy anything, but
today's Leo, it's not make sense.
No,
make your own tool,
absolutely.
because it's a lot of effort to arrive. It's
Yes,
a lot of and a lot
fully
of
agree.
money.
Fully agree, but we are giving to our customers, to the sponsor of PMO, two options. There's no excuse if you want to buy it because you have it, several tools, or we can build it. There is no excuse. My point is, you don't sponsor PMO, you don't have any excuses to do something. It's scalable, more than Excel, more than PPTs, more than PowerPoints. Let's build it.
Yeah, it's true.
But it's hard. But well, we are going to continue talking. Hey, knocking on the door. Hey, let's do it in one way or in another way. But we need to do that, no?
Exactly.
Okie dokie. I saw the well, a little bit, yes, but very useful. Bill, what do you have in the next months? Just share us. What do you have on plans in the next few months, in the rest of the year? Any conference, any talks, any training?
Yeah, there's quite a few things scheduled. I don't have it up in front of me, but yeah, there's new ebooks coming. There's new webinars coming. I've got a lot of material kind of prepped and ready to go. So this here, I've made an ebook out of, and so I'll be launching the ebook on PMO Metrics. I've got lots of talks coming. So I'm really excited about it. Some new courses coming out, a time and scheduling course coming out soon. So yeah, lots
wonderful.
Of stuff.
Never forget that you have the doors open in our global community of PMOfficers for sharing everything you do, everything you are building, creating. No, please feel free to share.
Yeah, that'd be
anytime.
Great. Okay. I appreciate that. I love coming to talk to you guys, so I love it.
Well, Bly is not for my side. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you guys all soon. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for everyone. We stay here and say bye-bye.
Bye now.
Good night here in Spain. Good afternoon, I don't know, in Seattle. You are arriving.
That's right. Yeah, it's only 12 o'clock, so we're good.
Okay, bye-bye all together. See you to the next webinar. I think it's for the next month, I know, Leonardo, no?
Yes, we have another one. In this case, it's in Spanish. We are going to talk about PMO successfully should well, as a top. Well, it's more than that, but in the public sector, how it was a very exciting experience that I have in government in Spain for a PMO is a success case. So we are going to share in Spain, and later we have another in Spain, and we are closing this fourth season. This is our PMOfficers webinar series. This is the first season. We are going to close it until the next year. So Bill, is a great honor for us that you are closing in English the webinar series. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you all. All right, have a great day. We'll talk to you all soon.
You too. Bye-bye.
From Barcelona, greetings. The rest of the world. Thank you very much. Bye. Thank you.
You.